Johannesburg.
All right, this week we're bringing you special extended interviews with most of the ANC's top 6 officials. The Deputy Secretary General, Jessie Duarte, may be re-elected, but technically all officials will step down ahead of a new selection at the ANC's elective conference this weekend. Well, she does join us in studio to look back at her time in office. So we welcome the ANC's Deputy Secretary General, Jessie Duarte. Thank you for being with us. I think a lot of people know you, but they don't know what a Deputy Secretary General does every day. Just give us some insight.
Yes, certainly. Mostly it's high-level planning for elections, looking at what we need to do to prepare our constituencies throughout the country for an election. So that's part of the job. Looking at research and finding research engines to do research on a whole range of issues. So in the past 5 years and before that, I've kind of dealt with local government and national government elections, and by-elections, planning for that, looking at candidates lists, dealing with the IEC, and then flowing from that would be any event that the ANC plans, NGCs, looking. And of course, the big one is the national conference. So, yeah, that's what the DSG does. Also, of course, looking at the NEC committees that deal with policy formulation and coordination and monitoring of implementation. So working with those committees fairly closely.
So for this conference, we were talking about 75,000 meals earlier. So you would look at the overall planning and logistics that all the pieces are in place.
It's actually 7,386 meals twice a day for 6 days. So it's a lot of work to be done in terms of making sure that in fact those meals will be there, that you'll have enough water every day, and that you'll have enough seats for everybody to sit in wherever they're going to be every day, buses from every region for every delegate, making sure that every delegate understands the rules of conference, preparing the delegates through their leadership at provincial and regional levels, and of course looking at the never-ending court cases that have been coming every day related to the conference and related to processes leading up to the conference, but also making sure that the processes are sound enough, fair to a large extent, and dealing with the contradictions of ANC people and the disgruntlement that arises out of a very huge organization trying to select 4,000 odd people to represent, you know, actually literally millions of South Africans.
How does your role extend to the functioning, the management of branch processes? Because you spoke about the legal, the court challenges. A lot of people are saying, why is this going to court, not being resolved by the ANC itself? We've had the Festival of Chairs. It just seems like disputes in each and every province, and huge division and violence even.
Well, I think the violence is unacceptable. Let me say that right up front. The task that the organizing division of the ANC does, which falls also under the Secretary General, and I'm his deputy, one of the things that we attempt to do is to make sure that the high level of contestation is managed locally, regionally, and provincially. And unfortunately, the reality is that you find several factions and factions within factions, and the real issue about being elected as an ANC leader could also mean employment for some people, frankly speaking. So it's a combination of people who understand it transactionally and people who understand it as a moral duty to represent the ANC, its values and its policies. And I think that clash between those two is what we're seeing playing itself out in many of the branches, where people would want to be the chair of the branch because that is the possibility of being elected as a councillor is real. And we're very open about this. We know that going forward, one of the things the ANC must concentrate on is the quality of its cadres that represent the ANC at every level.
So William Kiza was here yesterday saying that he believes most of the delegates actually just want a good leadership and they care about the future of the ANC. But the public perception is what you're touching on now. You know, let them eat. It's all about the money, claims that money will exchange hands before the voting. How did it get to this? And what do you think, are more people on the money side, or are more people on the ANC future side?
I think more people are on the ANC future side. And I think many people love the ANC dearly and feel very pained by what they see unfolding within the ANC at the moment. But we do have a real crisis in our country where, and I've seen, you know, you can study this in other young democracies, where if the private sector is not creating enough jobs, the public sector becomes the only place where people can find work. And so competition is very stiff. And we also have a high level of young people who've been educated, who feel that it is their right to represent this community, and the ANC is the vehicle that they choose. I think the gap really is the ANC's value stream not reaching people deeply enough, and that is a difficulty. And so we're not making excuses. I just want to be really straightforward about that. As early as 2011, we expressed this in our research to the ANC NEC. In 2015 again, we put out what we found on the ground, what people were saying. And of course, yes, the scale at which it is that the more noisy people, unfortunately, and the people who attract more attention are those people who are the moneyed people. And the older ANC cadre, the more loyal cadre, is perhaps a little less interesting to the media itself as well. So you might think that there's no thinking going on in the ANC, and yet there is. A great deal of that is going on.
You said research in 2011,
Yes.
I think, but what would you say to those people who are asking, what have you done? And does the current top officials take responsibility, including yourself, for the ANC being arguably more divided than ever, weaker than ever going into this conference?
I think the division in the ANC is something we must all take responsibility for. And I'd like to say this to you, that I think the bulk of this division started in 2005 and eroded the ANC's core to such an extent that people with good values who are now disgruntled left the ANC, sat out for almost 10 years, did other things, were either DGs and ministers and did other very important jobs, but didn't pay attention to the organization itself. And we found ourselves in a situation where very young people became the leadership of the ANC at the lower levels. And it's not that they're not good people, but any good person without sufficient strength of guidance will find other mechanisms to make themselves heard and known. So yes, we worked, yes, we organized, and we appointed people to be political education people who had other interests, in my humble view. I think we failed there. We failed to grasp what we were given as young people, solid political education, solid values, and we allowed accusations to be put forward as facts around people. So yes, people have been expelled from the organization. Corruption, the ANC cadres on the ground have put out who is corrupt and who isn't corrupt, but against that is also the idea of a corrupt person who isn't a corrupt person. So we're all in one bundle being seen as these corrupt people because, Francis, let me say this to you. I greatly admire you, and I think you come from a family of journalists. I think, maybe I'm wrong.
My grandfather was.
Your grandfather was. But, you know, I have to say that many of us have children who aren't political, who were born in the 70s and the 80s, whom we educated, who went out there to look for businesses, whom we educated in IT and other spaces. And so what happens is that child finds their own way around the world, and you remain in the ANC politics and you stay solid with that politics, and they meet people. And as a consequence of, and it's happened to many of us, to Zweli Mkhize, to Gwede Mantashe, to myself, to others that I know, they meet people. They have a dinner with a person. They go to India to examine data centers. They meet other people there. And of course, what that says is that you as a person, you're corrupt because your child is looking at business with people that other people may not like at all. So what has happened is...
Is this painful to you?
Of course.
Your child was linked to the Guptas
yes,
as well?
Well, he isn't, in fact, but he did go to India because his interest is the establishment of data centers, which is his expertise. So he goes to India, he meets the Sahara people, because they're a big player in the IT world. He comes back here, he meets them here, they have conversations, they talk, and that ends up being Jessie Duarte is corrupt. I have never taken anything that I haven't worked for from any human being, and I hope somebody who has found that I have will tell me, say, you're corrupt. Now, it's not just about Jessie Duarte, but it is also about that we're clouding real corruption. We're clouding it. And so, you know, let me say to you, I've studied it, and this is my understanding. In the state, you have people in middle management. Lots of people in middle management. In fact, middle management is bloated. Those people feel they don't earn enough, but they do have access directly to the supply chain for government. So what do? They take gifts. There is, and a number of them have been arrested, but not enough, okay? So there are not enough examples and samples of dealing with the real corruption that murders the soul of young people who go into the civil service. And the suppliers are never ever brought to book. I know only of one in Limpopo who was brought to book. An education supplier who was brought to book, and the entire Limpopo network of suppliers were collapsed out of one decision that one MEC took. So I'm just saying that, have we done enough? No, absolutely not. Are we at fault for the mess that the ANC is in? Yes, together with many other people who came before us, who started the divisions and then took a holiday from the ANC until this year, when thankfully they have started to come back, and I'm grateful. I think they are needed. Their voices need to be heard. They need to be in the branches of the ANC. They need to take back leadership positions at branch, at region, and at provincial level, and assist with the young people who have grown into the ANC from its mass movement perspective.
You've supported the president, and,
yes.
and if we don't even look at the state capture claims, yes. We don't even look at the Nkandla issue, the constitutional issue, you did stand by him during the cabinet reshuffle in March, and you said that some of the top 6 had expressed unhappiness. The feeling was that you supported the president, some spoke out. Looking at that, look at the economic damage that cabinet reshuffle has caused. What would you say to people who said, you guys did nothing, and you're perhaps aiding and abetting somebody who's hurting our economy? We have unemployment, we have poverty, we have illiteracy of late confirmed.
You know what, I think that when that particular situation did happen, the question that I was asked is, did the president consult you? And I said, yes, he did. In fact, for 9 months before Pravin Gordhan was asked to resign by the president, he told us, all of us, that he was going to ask him to resign. What I object to is the fact that my colleagues forgot about that, forgot that we'd been told almost repeatedly, I'm going to ask this minister.
Pravin Gordhan hadn't been told apparently
well,
for 9 months.
For whatever reason,
Yeah.
I can't take responsibility for
Sure.
that. What I take responsibility for is what I heard, that Pravin Gordhan had taken to instructing the president in cabinet, had taken to being arrogant with other ministers in the cabinet. That is what we were told by the president, that he was no longer able to communicate with him, and that it had reached a point of no return. So what does he do? He makes a decision and he tells us, I'm making this decision. Obviously, he brought the name of Brian Molefe into the discussion, and we disagreed. We said, no, we don't think that that's going to be a useful change, you know. And of course, there were very strong words used. But in the end, when I was asked...
The president wanted Brian Molefe to be the next finance minister,
he did
and you
say
guys
that.
pushed back.
Yes, we said no. He did say that, well, here's a young man who's put Eskom straight. Why can't he assist us elsewhere? You know, I think at some point in our lives, all these truths will be told. And the fact of the matter is that that top 6 doesn't always agree with everything that the president says. But what I feel uncomfortable with is being put in a position where I'm supposed to go out publicly every time we have a disagreement and say we disagreed. I will only tell the truth. We had 2 positions in the top 6 that time. It was wrong for us to come out publicly in whichever way we did, and we apologized to the National Working Committee, who demanded an apology. So we did that, all 6 of us.
Even after the local government elections, we saw a slide in support for the ANC. Has there ever been any thought in your mind that the president is being, well, the ANC is being punished for perceptions around the president, that maybe something should be done by you and other senior officials?
What you want me to say is that, did I agree that the president should be fired? We had a discussion in the National Executive Committee on 3 occasions. On all 3 occasions, that debate was not won. And the NEC emerged from that debate rather divided, unfortunately, and sadly so. But the agreement, and we've never voted in the NEC, and we didn't vote on those 3 occasions. And we came to the point where we disagreed with the view that said that the president must resign. So that was a collective view of the NEC, not Jessie Duarte's view, or any other individual could own that view. It was our collective view. And unfortunately, when it is a collective view, we must all stand by it, because that's how collectives work.
What's your relationship with Gwede Mantashe? I think there's been a lot of speculation around that, and the perceptions, and you can correct them if wrong, that he perhaps sympathetic towards Cyril Ramaphosa, you a strident supporter of the president, seen as sympathetic towards Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma. Does your politics get in the way of the working relationship?
I think we have a very healthy relationship with Gwede. Today, he was explaining that relationship to the Secretariat, which is all the provincial secretaries in committee. And he said, look, the thing that I have done over the last 5 years is he's appreciated the fact that I work, and we've argued about work. We've never argued on any other matter except what we work on together. And at times there's an emphasis this way and that way. It's not abnormal for people to have different preferences. And my preference is not for Jacob Zuma, because he's not coming back to be the president of the ANC. I have a very strong preference for a woman to be the president of the ANC. And there are a couple of women who have stood. And I think that our country is very ready for a woman to be the president, and a strong woman to be the president. And
Does
that woman is
Nkosazana?
I think she does. I think she may not have the respect of capital in this country yet, But I think she will gain that respect because of the character that she is. She's shown her mettle in all the jobs that she's done, including her last job as the AU chairperson. And I think that if we're going to value people in particular ways, I'm not interested in discussing anyone else or making comparisons. I'm simply saying it's not abnormal to have preferences, and I do have a preference, and I have a preference for a strong woman to be the president of South Africa.
Fair enough. There's some concern about a tweet, and you were talking about division in the ANC, saying you're willing to be open about that, and you were talking about youngsters. What we're bringing up now is Jackson Mthembu, a high-ranking official weighing in on the possibility of Ace Magashule, the Premier of the Free State, being elected as Secretary General. And I'd like to talk about you being up for Deputy or Secretary General, but this is quite vicious. Who in their right mind would elect Ace Magashule? No one. He will kill the ANC. So you have top officials speaking like this. How do you deal with that?
I think that it is unfortunate that Jackson doesn't raise these matters internally for us to debate and discuss the value or demotivate what he thinks somebody doesn't have. You look to me, it looks like he's made up his mind about a particular slate, and I haven't. You know, I support one individual. I'm very clear. I support Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma. I've noticed that Ace Magashule has received quite a bit of support. I think that's interesting, and he has been the Premier. He's been the longest serving chairperson of the ANC. It's 25 years. Sure. And that's a long time to serve as a chair of the ANC in a province. So there must have been some things that he did right. Whatever your views might be, I don't think a tweet to everyone out there, he's basically making his view known about another candidate. Yeah. That's how I'm seeing that.
Let's look at that candidate, Ace Magashule, and link it to you, because we were talking about women in leadership. I think he's been nominated by the ANC Women's League as Secretary General. You have been nominated in Deputy Secretary General capacity by several of the provinces, I believe. But that's a supporting role. Does that concern you, that he's up for the main gig supported by the Women's League?
I don't have a difficulty with that. The Women's League have always supported men in different positions. What I like about what they've done this time is that they've supported a woman for the presidency. And that's the first time really openly that they've ever done that in the history of the ANC, even when they were the women's section in exile. They always supported male candidates. So I don't have a difficulty with that. I think they've probably thought it through. They found that they want him as a Secretary General. I think that I chose differently, and I have a right to make a choice. When I was asked if there was any position that I would decline, I said I would never stand as the national chairperson of the ANC. The fact that I've not been nominated as the Secretary General of the ANC doesn't make me uncomfortable at all. I think that I serve best at the level that people have seen me work and serve. I haven't been elected yet. I've simply been nominated. And I think it is extremely unfair to begin to already cast me aside as someone who is against women's issues, when in fact that isn't true at all. And one doesn't, you're not against or for women's issues because you support a male Secretary General. I am firmly supporting a woman as president.
Do you feel any block in moving up? And you raised something this weekend. I'm going to see if we have that clip about minorities in the ANC. Let's see if we can start with that.
The ANC is not about individuals, but the ANC is an organization representative of all the people of South Africa. One of the problems we face right now is the marginalization of South Africans of Indian origin, so-called colored people, and white South Africans who are being marginalized by leadership of the ANC. And I think Comrade Isu has spent his life drilling into us the notion of a non-racial South Africa. I'm hoping that the next generation of leaders will understand that and move away from tribalism, which is becoming a serious difficulty for all of us to face.
Is that something that's perhaps bugging you as the...
What bugs me is that I walk into Limpopo, let me give that as an example, and I am in the Provincial General Council in Limpopo, and there is one person in a sea of people who is not African. That bugs me. To me, it's not about me, and it's not about any glass ceiling that prevents people of other racial groups from going into high positions. I mean, you've had Trevor Manuel as a Minister of Finance, Pravin Gordhan as a Minister of Finance, and so on. So it's not that. What I am concerned about is that the ANC in its character is beginning to lose its non-racial character in its broad mass sense. I worry about that. I worry that if one goes into Lenasia at the moment, you'll find that the people in Lens and Finetown are very divided from each other. It wasn't like that. And that deep racial fissures are beginning to emerge. And I think that the campaign against the president by Pravin Gordhan has also created some sort of difficulties about how people accept people of other racial groups. And it is not a simplistic matter for me. It's quite a deep matter. It's a matter that the ANC needs to discuss in the national conference.
Well, I think on the very same day, if I'm not correct, your preferred candidate, Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, was quoted as saying that whites had stolen land from blacks and robbed the country. And of course, there's truth in there. I'm not going to dispute and say there's nothing, but those sweeping statements, would you criticize her for that?
Yes, I would. I think it would be best for Comrade Nkosazana to explain what she means. The concept of dispossession of land is again not a simple matter. It's a matter that is at the root cause of poverty in our country. It is. And so when we go to conference, we need to deal with the land question very, very clearly. And we need to have policy certainty about what we're saying to people about the repatriation of land in this country and the date upon which it must be done. And no matter how anger at who dispossessed who of land, the fact of the matter is it is our responsibility to repatriate land to people and to have a land use plan. It can't just be repatriation and land isn't going to be used. It's got to be used to benefit our economy.
We're running out of time, but I have to ask you one or two more. This was very interesting that you wrote recently. The ANC took a wrong turn when we allowed our movement to be led by a combination of business and labour.
Absolutely.
What are you talking about, the tripartite alliance?
Well, I think that if one goes back a few steps, we've had 3 Secretary Generals who come from the labour movement. 3. We've seen now the very cozy combination in NEDLAC, for instance, where quickly issues of our policies are quickly discussed between labour and business. I think that the mass character of the ANC included everyone. And I do think there is a discussion in this country, even though it's not being openly said, where it seems as if the combination of business and labour to lead the ANC would be a better combination than the old style liberation activists, and I disagree with that. I think we're all needed. I don't think there should be this complete cozy relationship between business and labor and leave the rest out. I think there should be a united perspective that takes us forward. Our economy is not going to be fixed because there's a friendship between business and labor. Our economy is going to be fixed because we create jobs.
And won't a friendship help?
A friendship will certainly help, and so will the idea that business needs to take all the money that they're saving and pouring into very, very lovely buildings in Sandton and pour that into development areas as well.
All right, I wish we had more time, but thank you for joining us this evening. Our special interviews continue, and that was the ANC Deputy Secretary General, Jessie Duarte, and we'll continue tomorrow. We'll be joined by another ANC top 6 official. We'll speak to the ANC's National Chairperson, Baleka Mbete. Join us for that.